Before we dive in, let's outline the key topics we'll discuss. First, we'll examine the key differences between sexual and asexual reproduction. Next, we'll look at how each method works and the types of offspring they produce. Then we'll explore the advantages and disadvantages of both reproductive strategies. Finally, we'll discover how some organisms can switch between both methods depending on their circumstances. Living organisms can reproduce in two fundamentally different ways. Let's first look at sexual reproduction, which involves two parents combining their genetic material. In sexual reproduction, genetic information from two organisms, a father and a mother, is combined to produce offspring that are genetically different from either parent. The male and female parents produce specialized reproductive cells called gametes. In animals, these are sperm cells from males and egg cells from females. In humans, each gamete contains 23 chromosomes, exactly half the number found in normal body cells. This reduction is vital to maintain the correct chromosome number across generations. During fertilization, the egg and sperm fuse together, forming a cell with the full number of chromosomes, half from each parent. This is why offspring inherit characteristics from both parents. The specific mixture of chromosomes they receive determines many of their traits. This blending of genetic information creates a variation among offspring. Siblings often look different because they inherit different combinations of genes from their parents. Sexual reproduction isn't limited to animals. Flowering plants also reproduce sexually. They produce male gametes in pollen and female gametes in the ovules of their flowers. When pollen reaches the female part of a flower, fertilization can occur, leading to seed formation. In contrast, asexual reproduction involves only one parent and the offspring are genetically identical to that parent. Asexual reproduction happens through mitosis, a cell division process where one cell makes two genetically identical copies. The new cells contain exactly the same genetic information as the parent cell. Since there's only one parent, no fusion of gametes, and no mixing of chromosomes, the offspring are clones of the parent, genetically identical in every way. Many organisms reproduce asexually, including bacteria, some plants, and certain animals. For example, bacteria simply divide in two, with each new cell being a clone of the original. Now that we understand the basic differences, let's consider why these two strategies exist. Each has distinct advantages that make it beneficial in particular circumstances. Sexual reproduction offers several important advantages. First, offspring have a mixture of genes from both parents, which produces variation in the population. This variation increases the chance of a species surviving environmental changes. If conditions shift, some individuals may have characteristics that help them adapt and survive. For example, if the environment changes and introduces new predators, individuals with slightly different characteristics might be better suited to escape these predators. They're more likely to survive and reproduce, passing their beneficial genes to the next generation. This principle forms the basis for natural selection. Individuals with advantageous characteristics are more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass their genes to the next generation. Over time, this leads to better adaptation of the species to its environment and can result in evolutionary change. Humans have harnessed this process through selective breeding to develop animals and plants with desirable characteristics. For example, we've bred animals that produce more meat or milk and plants that yield larger fruits or are more resistant to disease. However, sexual reproduction also has drawbacks. It requires finding a mate, which takes time and energy. The search for a partner can also expose animals to predators. Additionally, only 50% of an individual's genes are passed to each offspring, meaning that favorable combinations of genes might be lost in the next generation. asexual reproduction offers different advantages. Since only one parent is needed, organisms can reproduce without finding a mate, saving considerable energy. This method is typically faster than sexual reproduction, allowing organisms to produce many offspring quickly when conditions are favorable. The speed of asexual reproduction makes it particularly useful for colonizing new environments rapidly. When a single bacterial cell reaches a new location with plenty of nutrients, it can quickly multiply to form a large population. Another advantage is that 100% of the parent's genes are passed to the offspring. If the parent is well adapted to its environment, all offspring will inherit these adaptations. However, the lack of genetic variation in asexually reproducing populations can be a disadvantage. If environmental conditions change, the entire population might be susceptible to the same threats, such as new diseases or environmental stresses. Interestingly, some organisms can reproduce both sexually and asexually, depending on their circumstances. The malaria parasite provides a fascinating example. When a mosquito carrying the parasite bites a human, the parasite reproduces asexually in the human host. However, when it returns to a mosquito, it reproduces sexually. Many species of fungi reproduce both sexually and asexually. They produce spores asexually, which can become new fungi when they land in a suitable place. But they can also reproduce sexually, introducing variation into their populations. Sexually produced spores introduce variation and are often produced in response to unfavorable environmental changes. This increases the chance that the population will survive the change. Plants often demonstrate both strategies as well. Many flowering plants produce seeds through sexual reproduction, but can also reproduce asexually. Strawberry plants send out runners, stems that grow horizontally along the ground. New plants form at intervals along these runners, genetically identical to the parent. Daffodils and other bulb plants can form new bulbs from the main bulb. Each new bulb can grow into a genetically identical plant. Asexual reproduction in plants can take place in different ways. Some plants produce runners. These are stems that grow horizontally on the surface of the soil away from the parent plant. At various points along the runner, a new strawberry plant forms that is identical to the parent plant. Other examples include plants that grow from bulbs, like daffodils. New bulbs can form from the main bulb and divide off. Each new bulb can grow into a new identical plant. The ability to use both reproductive strategies gives these organisms flexibility. They can reproduce sexually to generate genetic diversity, helping the species adapt to changing conditions. In our next episode, we'll delve deeper into meiosis, the special type of cell division that produces gametes with half the normal number of chromosomes.